Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Digestible Podcast. I'm Stacy, along with my co-host and sister, Melissa. And here at the Digestible Podcast, we like to give you all the health and wellness information you need in an amount of time that your busy day can handle, and we make it easily digestible. Who do we have today, Miss?
Well, Stace, we have Christa Biegler. She's a registered dietitian and licensed nutritionist. She's the owner of Less Stress Life Nutrition. She sees private practice clients in the areas of digestion, skin, fatigue, sleep, and hormone issues. She's the author of the Eczema Relief Diet and Cookbook, short-term meal plans to identify triggers and soothe flare-ups. Her podcast, The Less Stressed Life, provides lifestyle and nutrition content for reducing inflammation, which is really the crux of it, isn't it, Stacey?
It sure is. So enjoy the episode.
Christa, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for letting me come on.
Well, we're excited to jump in because you've had some great experience working with clients. You are a functional nutritionist, and you've had some of these issues yourself, and you were able to find root causes and work on improving the quality of your life. So we'd love to talk to you about things I think that affect a lot of people, like eczema, thyroid issues, trouble with their energy, gut issues. Mm-hmm. So we understand that the root of a lot of this is inflammation. What do you think? Can you talk a little bit about what's triggering our immune systems? What kind of things are we talking about? And
sure.
How they manifest?
Yeah, there's a image that's coming to mind. It's an image from a particular immunologist named Dr. Samuel Yannick. And I remember the first time I saw it, he was teaching some courses on immunology and inflammation. He talks about, it's sort of like you can imagine this circle in the middle, and there's all these circles coming out of it. And there's many inputs that are increasing inflammation. For one, a super fun one is brain inflammation. It reminds me of this client I had who was a volleyball player, had a couple of concussions playing volleyball, and she had some super bizarre food reactions and sensitivities and things. But ultimately, we had to address gut and other things. So brain inflammation, just kind of a fun, weird one, because so much actually starts in the brain, more than we think. A lot of subconscious stuff starts in the brain, but so any kind of like even small damage there can make a real trigger to the immune system. Other things that are smaller inputs, or they're considerable and significant inputs, would be environment and food and toxic burden. But a couple of the really, really big ones are dysbiosis, which means what kind of imbalance is happening in the gut, which is also where 70% of the immune system resides. And the other one, which is really interesting, is stress chemistry. And so what I mean by that is when stress goes up, our body compensates always, right? It's dumping out minerals, and minerals or nutrients in general are the workers that make all the systems and the machines work in the body. And so when we oversimplify it like that, when we're dumping out the workers, or since this is called the Digestible Podcast, when we're not digesting and absorbing the workers, which is a bigger problem than most of us think, right? Pretty much any symptom could be a sign of poor digestion. So we're not getting these workers, these nutrients, to go to the different operating systems or machines in the body, then the production slows down. And whenever the production on a system slows down, things start to, like the body starts to have to rob Peter to pay Paul, or borrow from something else. Like its job is to keep you upright and alive and protect you and keep you safe, right? Always, always, always. And so function will slow down, and essentially symptoms will pop up overall. And so back to stress chemistry. This can look like a lot of things. One of my, big things where it kind of pulls at my own heartstrings, because it was me as well. I think that's most high performing, high achieving women trying to do everything, which is most women, is that we have a lot of unconscious stress. And so I think in order to correct or support ourselves or feel our best, we have to kind of bring that to be conscious, or we have to bring that into our awareness sphere. And I probably would not have resonated at all with the word consciousness years ago, but I read this book that was really convicting. I want to share this from Dr. Gay Hendricks, and it's called The Big Leap. And a mentor had sent it to me right before I started hosting retreat. And I remember reading it, and I felt naked reading it, because he was talking about zone of genius versus zone of excellence. And most people will die in their zone of excellence, meaning like it's the thing people tell you you're good at, that you could do in your sleep, that you could just keep doing forever. But it's not that thing that like lights you up for the day, that like breathes life into your soul. And I remember thinking like, oh, I just live in my zone of excellence so much, right? And this was, I don't know, a handful of years ago. But I bring that up just because until that book, I thought the word consciousness was pretty darn woo, but it is like, am I aware of it or am I just cruising, right? Am I just going from thing to thing to thing and kind of eating passively or like multitasking? All of these things are kind of nervous system responses or just things that we've kind of done to survive, for lack of a better word, in general. And so I think there's a lot to it. But when we're talking about inflammation, to wrap that with a bow, there's a lot of inputs that go into it. My favorites are that dysbiosis and what's going on in the immune system, but also toxic burden and some of the food and environmental stuff. I brought up the brain inflammation piece, and then also that stress chemistry. And I think understanding stress chemistry is super important because it's a skill and like how to support your body and what's actually happening as a result of stress and then being able to compensate for it is sort of a skill that supports you forever and ever and ever. There are certain skills that you need, as we enter perimenopause and beyond. Like if we want to age gracefully, if we want to feel good throughout the life, like understanding how to support these systems or understanding that, hey, here's the thing is not that we're not going to have any stress. That is unrealistic. Like we will have stress. It's a matter of, can you recognize that it's a thing and can you give yourself support? And if you can do those things, you're doing better than 95% of other people. So congratulations. But worst case scenario, these are skills you can learn.
So Christa, when someone comes to see you, where do you start with them?
Yeah, I think the first step for anyone is assessment because you can't fix what you're unaware of. So it's really a pretty good segue from the last answer, which is like, you can't fix something you don't think is a problem. I actually have a rule where, and I think we've all experienced this as health conscious people, where once we learn something, we really want to share it with someone else, which is amazing if that person wants to receive it. But I think we've also all experienced it, especially with family, when they don't want to receive it. And so I share that only because it's like very natural and very normal to want that for everyone. I was coaching a client yesterday and she was struggling with her newly grown up son who was going to college but living at home, and she really wanted to control some outcomes around his health. And it's like, yeah, you cannot control everything, right? So anyway, where do you start is with awareness and assessment. But my rule is that I don't tell people that they have a problem they don't think that they have, because it's just wasting my own breath. But I've grown into that.
They have to discover it on their own or have it.
Yeah, or you have to help them. You have to help show them or connect that information, which is podcasts are great. Like anything you're doing to educate yourself at all, right? Scrolling the internet sometimes can be a double-edged sword, but like sometimes it brings awareness to a thing. For me, I think that the simplest thing to do is to do something with that data. So first of all, like what does someone want? What do they think that their problems are? And or what would happen if you fill out a big symptom questionnaire, which you ladies are familiar with, undoubtedly, right? There's a variety of formats of different symptom questionnaires, and they're not necessarily diagnoses, right? If you can catch someone in symptom version well before a diagnosis, right? If you can help someone when they're starting to lose hair before they've been diagnosed with a thyroid condition, if you can help someone with throat clearing before, they get a diagnosis, because unfortunately, a lot of times people start to seek other options when they've run into a wall, right? If they go to their provider and they're like, I'm not getting any answers overall. We want to go ahead and shine a light on the things that are common, but not normal. So in short, the first answer is awareness assessment. And you can do that by Googling multiple symptom questionnaire. We all have different versions of them, but you can find a pretty okay version just on the internet. And you can actually kind of calculate this total score. I call it kind of an inflammation score in general, but it's a total score of all these different symptoms that you can reduce, that you totally have options to reduce that number in totality. But I think that, awareness assessment. A couple other pieces would be the story, the history, where do things start, right? Like things that but we all need to know that, because what I'm really looking for, not surprisingly, is what's the priority in the body? And depending on the symptoms and what's going on, and there's some interesting things that have happened in the last 5 years that have really shaped this, which is why you cannot be too generic. And that's why I think there's a loss of trust in general, because we've gotten really generic. So there's things you can do to help customize. I call it triage or prioritizing, essentially, right? Where it's like, all these systems need help. By the way, like all of these machines in the body need love and support and help to function optimally. But sometimes there are some priorities in the system. Like when you support these areas, you're going to get faster results because these were the ones that are like really crying. They're really sad, etc. So it's awareness assessment, some story, understanding that. And even understanding, I think the other thing is, I don't know if you guys are seeing this. It used to be that my clients would come to me from their doctor's office. I always say, like, don't blame your doctor. They got some of the same stuff you're dealing with sometimes, that they don't know what's going on either. They only have the tools probably in front of them unless they've done some continuing education outside of it. But it used to be that people come from their provider, and now they're coming to me from other functional, integrative, alternative, etc. providers. And so that's important because, one, there's an extreme lack of trust with everything, with them, with their own body, with broken trust with not getting results from past practitioners, which is a sad thing. But we also need to utilize what they did in the past to inform the future. And so it's just like, why would we want to do more of things that don't work? So I always listen for sure for those stories. Like, what have you tried? What was successful, not successful? Really specific. Because if someone has seen someone else and they've done some good testing and they've done a protocol, I want to see the holes. I definitely want to know what the holes are, because I'm going to want good results. And the way to do that is to be able to see those holes really quickly and help someone patch those holes. And I want them to understand themselves too.
All right. So what I'm hearing is, because everybody's different and because their environment's different, their history's different, the stress in their life is different. It's really hard to say, well, this is caused by. But I think what we hear about a lot of common issues are things like dysbiosis, which could manifest in a lot of different ways. Inflammation that can be like arthritic, and it can and cause pain, foggy brain. People have problem with energy. People have eczema. And there's like, where do we start? So some of the things we can control are things like environmental toxins, like what we're putting on our skin, the beauty products we're using, if we're eating organic. That's like a clean living. And I think that's something that's accessible, although we're so inundated with the unclean. I think that's not as easy to achieve for a lot of people. But then there's also things like you mentioned, like stress. They need to know, how do I survive in this stress-laden life with the toxins and the food? And so how, like, when you say you need to do an assessment, is that where you go, okay, let's find out where this is coming from?
Yeah, I'm going to massage what you're saying a little bit, because, I mean, it's interesting. People have stereotypes about what they believe inflammation is, and I don't really care, but inflammation isn't really a system in the body. It's a reaction to different things happening or inputs to the body. So what I am also doing after we're getting a general understanding of that history and symptom, etc., is we look for patterns. You just said inflammation might look like brain fog, but it actually could be coming from dysbiosis. It could be coming from poor drainage and detox. It could be coming from sluggish thyroid. So it actually could be coming from multiple places. And so how you correct that is you start to support those systems. And as that clears, if you've been supporting X or Y system and it's not cleared, don't worry, there's options always for everything. And so the real answer is, like, after that initial stuff and you take the initial inventory, we start to pattern and support. And I kind of talked about this already a little bit, but in different words. And so as you kind of bucket these symptoms, there are many symptoms that are attributed to different systems. And so the systems that are very under-recognized and under-supported. So we kind of sort of understand gut, but I would argue that we do not. So I will talk more about that in a moment. But we support gut balance and correction of imbalance, et cetera, and support terrain in the gut, support drainage and detoxification, which is really not one system. It's multiple systems, but it's a category, right? Usually we're thinking of the liver. It can also be, it can technically be the bowels. It can technically be the lungs and inhale, exhale. It can also be the skin as a detoxification organ, right? And so the skin is always part detoxification and drainage, because the skin is a safe place for the body to put trash. So it's not only that, but it's the other systems as well. Because you brought that up. You said,
the skin is a safe place for the body to put trash.
Yeah. So if your trash bucket is overfull, and here's the tricky part about this, there's not incredible testing around this. So I feel that educating about this and helping people understand what some symptoms of poor drainage and detox look like, which I'll just name them, a handful of them now. Yeah. They might look like, and so this is so subtle. Have you ever changed your personal care products to be fragrance free because you had sensitive skin? You probably just thought it was so normal that you were like, oh, I have sensitive skin, so I don't use stuff like that. Like, a lot of people would say Yeah, I do. Right.
Right.
Drier skin in the winter, I would argue, is a drainage detox symptom. I could go off on a 10-minute tangent about that,
what?
but
Wait, pause for a minute. So it's winter, we're dry. I've got my humidifier on. I'm applying a lip balm
there's
every 5 minutes.
a handful of, so it can be a sign. I mean, just think about the physiology. How does your body utilize fatty acids and make cell membranes and lipid membranes, which makes your skin? So you consume fat containing food, which is good. And then you break that down with bile, which is made in the liver and stored in the gallbladder, right? So you break that down with bile, and then those fatty acids essentially carry around the fat soluble nutrients, but they also are part of the story of making up the lipid membranes of the cell. And what happens when you put lots of cells together, you make tissue. And so if your skin is dry, then naturally there could be some issue around that. Now there's a few layers to that. Some of us, like myself, we don't convert plant-based ALA, omega-3 fatty acids into the kind that human animals can use, which is EPA and DHA. I have a very slow FADS gene. So that means my option is to like literally take in the proper form for an animal, because my liver doesn't convert that efficiently. I don't know what the percentage of people that don't convert it, but we're the people who are more dry generally, but also thyroid stuff and etc.
You should be eating animal fat like salmon.
So omega-3 fatty acids come from the diet from salmon. Yeah. My favorite source is black cod, also called sablefish. It's a little less known, but it's a white fish that's fatty. It actually has more omega-3 fatty acids than salmon. The only plant-based form, because remember, it's an animal-based fatty acids, is algae, and it's not very efficient. It's like you have to take massive doses. So if you're not getting omega-3 fatty acids that way, and you can very easily test this, you can do a $50 finger prick from a company called OmegaQuant. I've never seen an adequate omega-3 status. But this is actually kind of important because back to the concept of inflammation, this is not particularly well known or well discussed, but inflammation uses up omega-3 fatty acids. And so I'm not saying go out and just jump on omega-3 fatty acids all the time. I'm contesting we need to understand this. And so a very tangible example of this is during the pandemic, when people were sadly having all kinds of things going on, and they absolutely certainly still are. This is a huge part of the conversation, or like the cascade of what I was just talking about, the cell membranes, the fatty acids, even being able to get nutrients in the cell. Guess what happens when you can't get nutrients in the cell and all your other systems are challenged? You have hypersensitivity and hyperreactivity, and you're reacting to everything and you're not really sure why. This has exploded in the last 5 years. But anyway, about that time, I'm sure you remember the headlines. They're like, athletes are dying and we don't know why because they're healthy. And it's like, I would argue that athletes have the most deficient bodies of people I've tested. So I have a generally healthy population, and I did comprehensive micronutrient testing on everyone for years, but athletes have really low nutrient status. It's because they have a lot of intentional inflammation. They're like working out, building muscle. That's intention. Like I've introduced inflammation to the body. So I've used up a lot of omega-3s and cell membrane status. I'm not getting nutrients inside the cell. And so I saw a low omega status, low fatty acid status, which makes sense. Those would go hand in hand, right? Because you don't have those fatty acids to carry that stuff around the body. And then just overall low mineral status, because if your lipid membranes suck, they're not in the analogy here, if you're in Arizona and it's dry, grass seed's not getting in, right? If you're in Iowa with the most supple farmland, right? You have nice cell membranes, right? The seeds are getting in. And it's just like that.
That's interesting. Okay, so should we be loading up on fish oil?
You can go test. That's totally fine. It's really, and I'm a little bit, I like to take a really educated approach to testing, because I get a lot of people who come to me after spending thousands of dollars in testing and they're not really seeing any difference. I'm like, yeah, because you need to know what you're doing. Like, is it even worthwhile?
My questions for you is like, do you start? I know you talked to.
Well, I did for 10 years.
And then do you start with the testing, or do you wait and say?
Yeah, so I did for 10 years, and then last year I asked myself the question, how do you help people get results faster? And I was like, I could just get started instead of waiting a month for test results.
So I work with physicians, and a couple of the physicians, they always go to testing first. And a couple
of
the
that's
physicians
logical.
Are like, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I'm calling it a duck. Let's start with just seeing if we can make some change, really. Like,
and you get to, and if you get to that point, because you're like, I ask people, I encourage my clients to answer 2 questions before any testing. What do you hope to learn? And can you be content if you learn nothing or it's all neutral? So when I'm talking about a $50 omega test, I kind of look at this as like low stakes. It's like, it's like easy. It's like kind of an optimal scenario. It's like you could do it at home. It's got a real clear, like, I'm looking to see if my omega status is adequate or inadequate. It's a very simple, it's probably like this discussion, even though the physiology was like interesting, it's actually like an incredibly simple thing to look at. Now, if we're talking about drainage and detox symptoms, and like, that's actually not as straightforward. Like, the testing for that sort of sucks. Like, things have to be super broken. Even for thyroid, things have to be pretty messed up for it to even show up on blood labs. Adrenal, like, talking about that, there's so many issues with how we test and treat that, and like how it's recognized. You have to practically be dead for the doctor to even diagnose you with something adrenal wise. And I don't necessarily blame them. It's just like, we're just not there. Learning how to support yourself in these areas these are life skills that are like, these give you good life. Like, this is good energy, good health. Like, you feel a lot freaking better. So to answer your question, it's like with testing, I don't automatically do testing. If I know that skin is dry, I think that's a good opportunity to go in and use omega-3s. But you brought up a good point that I think is underrated as well, is we should all be checking the humidity in our home, because we have forced air heat for those of us that live in warm spaces. And so that dries things out as well. And there's some really cool information about humidity, which is like, if it's too low or too high, flu virus actually thrives. And it's been really interesting for me. I have an Airbnb and we have forced air heat there. I have geothermal at my home here. So I hadn't really thought about low humidity for a while, because the humidity is really good at this home, but in the Airbnb with a fireplace, it's like suicide.
If it's dry, it's more likely, right? Flu spreads
we're in the
faster.
Midwest, so it's like
same
14 degrees outside, and snowy and cold. It's like the heat's turned up, and like I've got humidifiers in all the bedrooms, because like all of a sudden, like, the switchover happens, right? The lips are dry, the skin is dry. That's not how I normally am. I'm well hydrated, but like,
switch to oil cleansers. I mean, your face products should really switch in the winter.
My 13-year-old daughter is dealing with dry skin combination, but dry skin, dry lips. And she's like big on like, she's like, can I do Vaseline? I'm like, well, that's like a moisture barrier, but it's not going to like help hydrate your skin.
Something.
So what can we be doing then?
Yeah. Something shocking to me was I was chaperoning a bus full of kids, and I was like having them play like bus speed dating, so they would talk to each other instead of being on phones. And one of the questions I asked them was like, if you were on a deserted island, what things would you need to bring? And my 13-year-old came home. She's like, I can't believe how many people said Aquaphor. What's Aquaphor? And I was like, oh my gosh, really? Like, of the 3 things you want to bring, that's how bad it is? It's bonkers to me. So I guess we can have an entire session on dry skin and all the causes and possibilities. But
with eczema and dry skin, you have to sort of attack it from the inside and the outside, or just
so
the
to
inside?
be as brief as possible. No, it's both inside and outside. So this is sort of the funny thing about skin issues, is we want them to be really simple and topical, and they're twice as hard because they're actually internal and external. I could talk for days about skin issues, but in brief, and I think this is where context is so important. What we have in front of us is context of like, what's a 13-year-old willing and able to do? And what are the options? And so in short, when you're dry from the inside out, you're hydrating the cells. And so there's a couple primary nutrients. There's multiples you could use. But in general, I'm looking at a mineral status, and I'm looking at fatty acid status in general, aside from some other things.
Okay.
But anyway, well, mineral status wise, that's a slow gain, I will say. Like, you're not going to just fix your mineral status. So I want to go back to something I brought up before, which is I have this slow FADS gene. I'm not going to convert. Like, so I'm going to probably need to like support. If my skin looks like it needs lotion, my brain says, oh, I need to dose really high in omega-3s. People usually take like 1/8 of what they should really be taking of total omega-3s. So there is a barrier cream you can do. You can do some things that are like healing nutrients. Of course, there's many nutrients that are very healing. MSM, silica, potentially some zinc. So I kind of have some go-tos that I like. I love lanolin, by the way, as like anything lanolin containing as a barrier cream. It's incredible. I have a little tub of something I bought at a monastery in Europe last year I need to remake. It's like lanolin, beeswax, olive oil, calendula, right, which is the calming herb. I think that's all that's in it. I don't think I'm missing anything. Maybe there's a little bit of tallow. It's a lovely barrier cream for right now. So that's nice. Or even like some different oils, like jojoba oil is very lovely topically. So whatever you want to put on topically and then seal it in general is just like kind of kind of like generally the recommendation with skin stuff no matter what. So that's sort of the topical rec.
Yeah. Well,
I was going to say,
my daughter said, she said, what if I put a moisturizer on and then I put the Vaseline on? And I'm like,
smart.
That's smart.
Smart
yes,
girl,
okay.
right? Like, what can I put in here that's really like nourishing and nutritive, which is some of those oils, and then the barrier cream over top. So, and you get the opportunity. I think we want to think about things as curious experiments, right? Instead of desperation whenever possible. And so, like, she can try something for a week or 2 weeks. And if she's not like, it's like, okay, well, we tried the Vaseline. Like, is that the best one? Or literally in our house, my husband uses it is something you pick up at the ag store, and it is a udder cream for cows with lanolin in it. And it is an incredible, like, he's been using it since my kids were in diapers, but he uses it for chafing and all kinds of things. So that's like an incredible barrier cream, a little rugged, but it's called Corona. Okay. My husband's obsessed with it. Logically, with kids, it's like colder. We wash our hands, and it's like, kind of drying and getting potentially cracked.
Wash your hands, and then
right. We're disrupting the skin oils and the skin microbiome overall, right? Because a lot of our soaps are very stripping, and that's a whole thing. Yes. And then like 5 years ago, we got into using alcohol sanitizers, which is like suicide to the topical skin microbiome.
Yeah.
And then just like if you have dry air, it further sucks all the moisture out of your hands.
It's sort of like all the trifecta of problems. And then you're hydrating from the inside out. So I was talking about minerals with my 11-year-old, who is kind of like a little stressed little guy. Minerals are for sure a huge thing for him, but generally it's so inefficient to absorb minerals. Like, you need to pay attention to, there's a lot to say about minerals, but it's like the form is a big deal. Like the form of minerals you're taking in. There's an order of operations, technically. How's the cell membrane fatty acid status? So I'm a huge fan of bathing in minerals. So Dead Sea salts and our Epsom salt baths. Anytime I can tell he's like kind of stressed, I love for people to do my efficacious dose on an Epsom salt or a Dead Sea salt bath is 2 to 4 times a week for 2 weeks, and then see what you think. There's some bath flakes also that have methylsulfonomethane, MSM, or silica in them from Ancient Minerals. I love them, but they reformulated. They don't have one of the ingredients anymore. And when you came out of that bath, it was the softest, most amazing thing ever. So amazing.
So the sea salt and the Epsom salt baths are good for hydration and skin
So
conditions?
their Epsom salts are magnesium sulfate.
Right.
So you're going to get a lot. So thanks for stopping me to remind people, because we don't necessarily think that. But we're absorbing a ton of topical magnesium because your surface area of your entire body is quite dramatic compared to, taking it orally. And then when we add Dead Sea salts or other ingredients, or some other ingredients I sometimes add to baths as well, any kind of nutrients we have the opportunity to absorb topically. So minerals are a huge piece of hydration, but they're it's a slow, steady thing. Like after a couple of years of like supporting mineral status, you can see just less dryness overall. Like now I never really see any dryness in the winter on my hands, not like my son does. And his has actually improved a lot since I've been mineralizing him a lot. And then I'm doing large omega-3 fatty acids typically, but you can try other fatty acids as well and see what you like overall. Now for my 11-year-old, I'm going for at least 1,000 milligrams per day total omega-3 fatty acids. So I think dose is really important for adults. I go a lot higher than that. You have options with that particular, like this is a micro conversation, but you have options, and good quality products of this category are just expensive. So I'm not a person who's like, oh yeah, just supplement everything forever. I tend to like to understand how to use supplements to get the shortcuts and the outcomes that I want in my body overall.
Okay. Omega-3s are on a lot of people's short lists of if you're going to take supplements and you're on a budget, and like omega-3s is always there, and then magnesium is always there, and vitamin D is always there.
And you can plan to spend $45 to $80 per bottle. And so I think people want that bottle to last a long time.
Yeah.
And when you're following my dosing, it usually doesn't last very long, which is why I like to make it really focused, intense sprints typically to see a difference. Because remember, we just talked about this, is that if people don't have their expectations set up right, and they don't really see, like, if you don't have a clear outcome of what you're looking for in a certain timeline, then humans get bored and stop doing things. Duh.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
and so like you have to keep that in mind.
Maybe for a moment we can pivot to the fact that you have a podcast called The Less Stressed Life, and you focus on a lot of stress support in your practice. And you had mentioned around the holiday time, you'd like to talk a lot about people's stress levels. And I thought maybe you could talk to our audience a little bit about that.
Oh man, yeah, I need a half hour. But I will say that stress is a big umbrella. So there's always so many options. And one of the things I'd like to consider is it's not always what we can add, but what we remove. And I'd love to just stop by saying, like, a lot of times we have a plate in front of us, and if we're feeling overwhelmed or like we can't do another thing, it's the plate's already full. So I would encourage you to not feel like you need to add anything else necessarily. Nothing has to cost money. You were talking earlier, you kind of were talking generally about stress, Melissa. And I was thinking as you were talking, you know, there's all these big things we can go do, dramatic things we can go on retreat. And I'd like to ask you, like, what do you need every day to find like a moment of peace? And I think what is tricky, and I think you guys are moms, I think what happens to us, I think a population that ends up in chronic unrealized stress is moms, because they have for a very long time been woke up by a baby in reaction. Like, it's like, you're literally reacting all the time.
Yes.
And so I share that because sometimes we need to interrupt things before we get into all the other, like, yeah, scientifically, the stress is suppressing the immune system. So you're seeing increased illness right now. It suppresses digestion. So sometimes we're not digesting as beautifully around the holidays. It's dumping out the minerals, as we already discussed, which can look like lots of things. It may or may not be you may not really see a lot of symptoms until it's actually quite severe. And then it can look like eyelid twitching. It could look like literally anything, like more cramping with your period. I mean, it could be a headache when it's more severe type thing. All of those things are very logical, but it could be dryness, you know, as well. It's sort of like we can always support ourselves. And those are the three big areas I would want to give support. But before you can even get into that stuff, it's sort of like, hey, I just want to like have a friendly girl to girl chat where it's like, hey, can we interrupt what's going on right now? I have a tool that's like super easy and takes like 3 minutes, and I think it's relevant if you're feeling overwhelmed or like you have too much on your plate. And it's just taking a piece of paper and drawing a line down the middle and putting on a song or not just for those few minutes, and just jotting down really quickly what's draining my energy on one side of the page and what fills my cup on the other side of the page. And usually the more like overcapacity or burned out or just feeling like you're pulled in a lot of directions, the longer the energy drain list will be, right? And so I bring this up because there's just so much we can do about stress, but if we are just kind of cruising through and not really realizing the things that are stressing us out, then you're just going to be you're just like adding more, either you're adding more to the plate, which honestly becomes more stressful. And I think there's a lot of complaining about that online. People are like, oh, like being healthy is like this full-time job. And it's like, yeah, if you continue to add more shit on your plate, then of course it is, right? Sorry for that. But like, that's natural that would. So I always like to stop ourselves and ask, and I'll use another story. At the last retreat I was on, someone was there and said, Christa, what is one of your favorite nervous system tools? Like thinking I was going to give her something really cool and fancy, which there are plenty of options for those tools. And I said, oh, mine is to stop and check how fast I'm talking, because I grew up talking. If you think I talk fast today, this is much slower. Much slower than normal, I think. Yeah. Okay. And when you're talking, and I would say that this was really hard for me to accept for a long time, because I was like, I'm just excited. I just want to share so much, and I'm excited to share, but I'm talking fast, increasing my heart rate, increasing my cortisol, dumping nutrients all day long, client after client after client. So the most important thing I could do is stop and just ask myself, like, how fast am I talking? How fast is my heart? And I can catch myself by just putting my hand on my heart and being like, oh, how fast are you beating? Are you beating like faster than normal? Oh, well, then I'm kind of running in a stress response, whether I was conscious of it or not. I just thought I was excited, right? Yeah. And so stopping yourself and catching yourself around that stress response is probably one of the most valuable things you could do first. And then the rest of it is like, so if I know that this season is more stressful, I like to give myself more support to the adrenals, which minerals are a huge piece of that. If I'm traveling for Christmas or holidays or whatever, there's a couple things that are happening. There's a lot more illness floating around, and then I may have more stress being the mom packing all the things, and I may have less sleep if I'm crossing a time zone, especially, or just depending on what I'm doing, who I'm hanging out with. All of those things are probably bigger stressors to the body. Well, we know a couple of them are for sure, right? Like being around certain people, yes, a bigger stressor. Less sleep, yes, a bigger stressor. Those things are concerns. And so when our immune system is suppressed, how can we support that? And so it's like, oh, I need to be like, of course it is going to be suppressed. How can I support it? And I love to give myself back some immune support. My favorite version is immunoglobulins or colostrum or bovine immunoglobulins. So I'm going to pack different things along in the winter versus like if I'm on a summer trip with my family, because I'm not really anticipating as much susceptibility to illness. So my toolkit or support kit looks different by the seasons, which is exciting. It's not like, oh, I have to figure out more stuff. It's like, hey, actually, we have one vessel our entire life, and we have the opportunity to learn how to serve it best in different seasons, depending on where we live. And so things like this, like right now, I have this full spectrum light on my desk, right? Because it's dark. I'm in the Midwest. It's freaking dark right now, right? Compared to the rest of the year. And it can run down my energy really fast when I didn't see the sun. And so I just have to remember that, like, why am I feeling half sluggish? It's like, oh, I didn't see any full spectrum light or the sun today. Sweet.
Yeah, I think one of the tricks is like
remembering.
Well, it's not just the remembering, it's the finding the things that are feeding you and helping you rather than the things that we fall back on, like the sugar or the well, that's for me. That's one. Like, so if I want to treat myself, it's
the
like
sugar does feel good for.
I'm going to treat myself right, or one of my way to treat myself is to run away. So I go find a place where there's nobody, that no one needs anything from me. Like, can you give me like a few hours or half a day where no one's calling me, no one's expecting anything from me, no one's going to go, I need this. Can we talk about this? Do you have time to discuss? Did you get to this? And I don't want to get to that point. I also don't want to feed it with sugar because I end up feeling worse afterwards. So like you said, that you have these things, like you have the light and like the things that are supporting you during this time. But it's like, it's just, I think it's finding your thing, but it's got to be like feeds everything, which is so hard.
Right. Well, and it's the context. Like with that example, Melissa, it's like really doing that exercise of what's draining you and what's feeding you, like having awareness around that and getting rid of more of that stuff earlier instead of so the good awareness is like, you have an awareness, like when you crash, you're like, I can't do this. I got to make a switch and like quit being sucked. Like essentially you're having a lot of withdrawals on your energy and not enough deposits. And so it's like, what fills my cup? I gave that example of moms reacting to everything. So I figured out at one point, because you don't have an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. Like everyone's already got too many expectations and things. So it's like, how can I give myself a deposit and feel good in 3 minutes? Right. And so like, if I can just have a couple of minutes of quiet by myself and like nourish, like give myself a good breakfast and not be needing people needing, which looks like shutting off notifications for me. Right. It's like, oh, if I tend to be reactive around that, which I have had lots of issues around that for a very long time. One strategy is to not be triggering that. And to that end, I remember for years kind of being the supportive wife, going on these backcountry trips with my husband and then being out of phone service for a few days. And it was incredible for breaking these neural pathways of like reactivity. Because once we get into these spirals of reactivity, it can be kind of hard to break them without actually breaking them. Now there's these great tools, app blocking, which is very easy to override, right? Or bricking, which is a little less easy to override. But when I hear you talk about that, it has really nothing to do with throwing those extra things in as much as like, what fills your cup in a couple of minutes, I don't know what the answer is for each one of us,
everyone,
right?
It's different, right?
Right. But I know that being needed constantly forever and it's like a beautiful gift, and it's very withdrawing, right? And so it's like, how do I put deposits in for myself?
Right.
And for me, it was like, I just need a few minutes by myself at the middle or beginning of the day. And if I didn't get it, I can see the spiral happening and I just stop and like breathe and take that space.
Yeah. Okay. So like figuring out what it is that feels me for a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's
a game, really. It's like gamify it. It's like, oh, how can I actually, because there's all these, something that someone said one time that was really impactful was like, you can have this Cadillac morning routine, or you could have like the 5-minute or less version. What would go in your 5-minute or less version? Just being realistic.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear you. And I feel like that's great. It's like the 5-minute get ready and run out the door, 15-minute get ready, run out the door, the 30-minute. What do you have time for? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
You talked about dumping out minerals. when you're stressed, your body dumps minerals. Can you talk about that a little bit? Real quick.
I mean, that's just what it does. When cortisol goes up, potassium goes down, magnesium goes down, when aldosterone goes up. So the adrenals, which are an underappreciated organ that sit on top of the kidneys, they produce multiple hormones, including cortisol, which is essential. It's Jekyll and Hyde. It's like you need it. If you don't have it, you'll be dead. So your body's going to produce that above all else, which is a whole fun conversation about that. But it also your adrenals also produce aldosterone, which controls blood pressure. And it's very common for a very health conscious person to be applauded because their blood pressure is normal or even a little low. And if you don't even know what low is, you wouldn't be able to recognize that. 120 over 80, right? So if it's like 119 over, 75 or 77, all of that is like low end blood pressure because your body's keeping things there's a couple things that your body keeps really tip top, and it's pretty much blood pressure and then the electrolytes in the blood, the pH in the blood. So that's a whole conversation around like minerals. Like they're going to look really good in the blood because like you have to have them look good in the blood. Otherwise you're going to pass out. Your body's going to rob from your tissue to pull into the blood anytime it's depleted. So when you've been stressed for a long time, your body has some stores of that in the tissue. It's going to use it in the blood. And then when you get depleted there, you're going to like be like, why do I not feel amazing? Or like, why am I crashing? Or like, why do I feel like I need to dissociate at the end of the day? Or all the things, all the things. But anyway, the point of mentioning or giving you a little bit of background to aldosterone is that it controls blood pressure, not in this high version necessarily, but it's a bumper. It's like the bowling alley bumpers. And so when that will use up sodium in general. And so you'll blow through that as well. And that might look like, for me, my tangible example of that was from a lot of my life, like public speaking, I would pit out. And that was kind of my aldosterone at work, like managing my blood pressure.
Okay, so that was your body's way of managing the stress.
It was like dumping out sodium because right. I was performing, right? I was doing public speaking. And so my blood pressure would want to rise contingent with like other stress hormones in general. And so aldosterone was kind of like trying to support me, but it was dumping out the sodium through the sweat.
Got it. Okay. So cortisol and aldosterone are types of adrenals that help you with stress.
Those are hormones that the adrenals produce. And then when those hormones are going up or down, but specifically up, you're going to dump minerals, specific types of minerals.
Okay.
You're not going to find it in blood testing
every day, but if you're not managing your stress.
Yeah. So you should think about it like this. Like for me, the holidays are more, had always been more stressful because I was Santa Claus and everything else, that we females are during the holidays. And so it's like, I'm actually dumping out more nutrients during these stressful times. So I need to replenish. And typically high quality electrolytes are a really easy way to replenish throughout the day. And I mean, like, I take a lot of electrolytes. You can do different things. You can make up your own with coconut water, and you can do all kinds of things. What they sell at like the main big box store is probably not like the highest quality electrolyte. It's mostly carbohydrates and not a lot of minerals. If you're not getting more than 200 milligrams of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, not the highest quality product.
What do you think of like an LMNT or an Ultra?
Yeah, so LMNT is completely sodium and very little potassium. So that's fine. I might be drinking one right now, but it's out of balance for potassium.
Right,
yeah, it's just, it doesn't have enough potassium. Like, sodium is fine. It's great for this purpose. We were just talking about what dumps sodium. The problem is that we also dump potassium, and it's much harder to get food-based potassium.
So that's helpful to know. Okay, so when we're stressed, our bodies dump minerals, and that and so
your adrenals love minerals. They really need them. And so if you're supporting your stress response during the holidays, like doing more electrolytes throughout the day, like just doing that throughout the day can be massively beneficial to your energy.
Thank you for the tip. That's a great tip.
That's a great holiday tip. Stay hydrated, people.
Stay hydrated, electrolytes. Okay, well, if you're getting enough sodium but not enough potassium, what can you get from, what kind of food can you eat to get more potassium? Or should we just take a supplement?
No, please don't. Use food for potassium. It's much more bioavailable and actually more effective.
Excellent.
Bananas, avocados. So here's the big ones. Potatoes, but especially the skins on the potatoes are like half the potassium. So one of those is going to give you a pretty decent dose of like 600 to 800 milligrams. I'm looking for thousands of milligrams of potassium. Like the average Joe needs 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams, like at least 2,500. The RDA is 2,000 milligrams of potassium. Most people struggle to hit that. And I
Okay.
think you should have more.
Okay.
Coconut water is a big one. Orange juice, milk,
Okay.
technically. So orange juice, tomatoes are huge as well. So those are all like
good.
powerhouses. Kiwis, I think, are really great as well. I usually recommend you get like a couple thousand right away, early in the day, and then try to have at least one high potassium food later in the day as well.
Okay,
So potatoes with
great.
skins are amazing. Also,
Potatoes
those
with
carbohydrates are really great for buffering cortisol. So it's all good.
Oh, good.
And the reason orange juice is more high potassium and not oranges is because of the concentration, actually. So oranges by themselves are not insane, but you're getting like a couple of oranges and a glass of orange juice.
In this case, the juice is good.
Yeah, and I think my point is like there's lots of options. Pick the one that works for you, because guess what? Like people have a lot of hang-ups around food.
Yeah. No kidding.
I do.
Really?
I do.
Lots of feelings about that.
Well, listen, we've really appreciated your time. This has been great. We like to finish all of our episodes with the same 2 questions for all our guests. So if you could give one to do, a takeaway from today's conversation, an action item for our listeners, what would it be?
One? Just one?
Yeah.
Just one.
Okay, cool. So I would have them do the energy vampire exercise. I was just gonna have them do 2 assessments, but just the energy vampire exercise, like what's draining your energy and what's filling your cup. Because if you don't have a handle on that, like nothing else I said really matters. Nothing matters because stress is always the self-limiting fact. And by the way, like there is no zero stress life. It does not exist. It's simply awareness of when I'm in an activated stress state and what does it look like when I'm not in an activated stress state. And guess what? Sometimes you don't even know what that feels like to not be in an activated stress state. So this kind of extremely simple 3-minute exercise can help you start to unpack that.
Great.
All right, now I need to know the second one.
The second one would be going to do a multiple symptom questionnaire so you can get a whole baseline of like because remember assessment and awareness are always the first step. So that's kind of like physical symptomatic awareness. And the other one is like awareness of the unrealized stresses that are like just kind of taking up rent-free space in your brain, which are super taxing to all the physical. So,
Okay. Those are
Great.
great. I like those.
Thank you.
Okay. So here at the Digestible Podcast, we like to say, don't panic, just pivot. Would you like to share a pivot or a small change that you've made in your life that you're proud of?
oh my gosh, all the time. Last year when I said, how can we help people get results faster? For me, I have to make things a game. I get kind of bored doing the same thing over and over. It's an entrepreneur's curse, perhaps. And so I made a pretty significant pivot to do some different things to solve problems that I thought were really plaguing our industry. And so, changes that were actually pretty uncomfortable, that made it's comfortable to do what works for a long time, but it's sort of like, yeah, but this isn't really working if this, and this are happening. So that was a pretty big, I think personally to me, I think the quality of questions and answers we give ourselves, which the quality of questions determines the quality of life. And so usually for me, anytime I'm making a big pivot or a change, it's usually inspired by like a really powerful question. And how am I going to answer that?
That's great.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, seriously, this is great.
This
Your
is-
energy's
it's
great.
been a
Your
lot of fun.
information's great. Thank you for listening to the Digestible Podcast with today's guest, functional nutritionist Christa Biegler. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share us with others. It's the best compliment you can give us. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at info@digestiblestrategies.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And remember, don't panic, just pivot. The content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals, and the views expressed here are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any health conditions. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making any health-related decisions.